I finally watched Eyes of Wakanda, and there are a lot of things that I thought were super interesting with it. There are some things that I really did not like, was not necessarily here for, but ultimately I need to know. I think the question we all have on our minds is, what is the point of this? Why does this exist? Hello everyone, welcome back. It's me, Amanda, and I am here today to talk to you about Eyes of Wakanda, which is a show that is remarkably short. I would say an easy one to watch. I unfortunately did take a little while to get to it just because this has been a busy month for me. I was at Gen Con, then I was at Fan Expo, but finally I have watched all 4 episodes. I have gathered some thoughts, and I'm here to reflect. Ultimately, Eyes of Wakanda is a really cool show. It is basically taking the War Dogs, which is a faction in Wakanda that are basically like Wakandan spies. They're like their Black Ops team, if you will. And we're getting to see, first of all, how the War Dogs came to be, but also how the War Dogs have evolved and changed, and how their missions have had an impact on Wakandan history over time. So what I love about this show is that it is kind of a anthology through time, where each episode is its own story, following its own Wakandan War Dogs agents as they go through a mission, which I really think is cool. So obviously, fair warning, we are going to be talking spoilers as I'm going to be getting into it. This is a review. So I am going to be kind of discussing what I think worked here and what I think could have been better. I think what I'd like to start with is my favorite episode, which was the Trojan episode. One of our episodes takes us back to the Trojan War, and we follow Achilles and Memnon. And Memnon is Bukai, who is our undercover agent. I think the challenging thing with this one is that there are so many characters and we really only get 1 episode to really get attached to them. It's hard for a lot of these characters to have staying power. And what I liked about the Trojan War episode, which is episode 2, Legends and Lies, is that because it was set in kind of this Greek mythical heroic tale, I was very interested in it. I am someone that has read Homer's The Iliad, so this is a story that I'm familiar with, and I just thought their approach to, what Wakanda's role could have been in all of this, and their involvement, and kind of having Memnon be an undercover Wakandan agent was really neat. I also really love seeing the tech in the show that Wakanda uses, like even early on in their history. They're just so advanced, and it's so cool to see what kind of gadgets they're going to come up with. I think my favorite one in Legends and Lies is the little communications device that Memnon has that he uses to talk to Wakanda by clicking different parts of it. I thought that was so cool. And I love that because he was undercover for so long, because Memnon was there for 9 years, he gets this attachment to the world to the point that when he completes his mission and he goes back, it's really sad because he actually feels more other in Wakanda because he's become more comfortable in Greece. And the fact that he also had to fight his best friend Achilles, and that whole thing just felt really moving, I guess, because I got attached to the characters and their emotions. It made me tear up when Memnon had to fight Achilles. And so I think there's a lot of potential for what we could be exploring in this show in terms of it having an emotional impact. The problem lies in the fact that, we really only get an episode to get attached to each of these characters. Although I will say with episode 1, I was instantly pulled into the show. I thought it was very compelling. I think visually the show is also just stunning, so there's a lot to love there. I think the idea of how this faction kind of came to be, and also getting to watch some of the characters evolve as we are introduced in episode 1 to a character who goes on to become basically the leader of the War Dogs. That whole idea is cool. If you're gonna do that, I think you need a little bit more than maybe 4 episodes. I think the problem with the show ultimately is that it's such a grand scale what they want to build, but they only have 4 kind of bite-sized episodes to do it in, which is a really big task. I think the other issue that I have with the show is that while I think each of the stories in and of itself is cool, the Lost and Found episode with Iron Fist, getting to see, as well, another Iron Fist from earlier on in the history as opposed to Danny, even the Black Panther and the idea of now we're kind of going to the future, this idea of moving through time, the idea of history and heritage and legacy. All of those things are really cool. The part that I struggled with in this series is figuring out what we were really saying about any of this. So there are themes, but it never really feels like the show makes much of a statement on any of them. They exist, they're there, they're present, they're part of the story, but what are we doing here? Like, why does this show exist? And now I understand that obviously Wakandan culture, heritage, all of that stuff is fascinating. And I agree that it is an area of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and also of the comics that I always think is really cool to explore. I think there's a lot there. And actually, I really want to read more Black Panther because of the MCU. The MCU is a place that got me excited about this character and really got me to want to dive deeper into the lore. However, at the end of the day, the reason why, we really connect with stories is because there is something intrinsic about them that reaches out and touches us. And where I think, we miss the mark with Eyes of Wakanda is it just feels like we don't really know what we're saying. There's nothing specific enough to reach out and connect to you. There's nothing that really fully feels like it unifies all 4 of these episodes in a way that thematically feels impactful. The story makes sense for linking them. The idea of what we're doing here makes sense. But the why behind it is still a huge question mark for me. And I mean, maybe you watched this and there was something that it said to you and it spoke to you, and I would love to hear, what you got from it. But for me, it just felt like I don't really understand why we felt compelled to make this show other than because Wakanda is cool, the world is cool, the characters are cool. Cool. And I think the problem with the MCU, where the projects that we've seen that have been more successful versus less successful, is that the more successful ones actually have something that they set out to say. I think that this at least has a very strong creative direction in terms of the visuals of the show and of the story. But just like I said, I think in terms of the message, that's where we kind of lost ourselves, which makes it unfortunately a bit of a subpar watching experience because although it's interesting, it doesn't make it super memorable. Like, I'm going back now, and even when I wanted to go back to the episodes and talk about some of these characters, I'm struggling to click with the names. The characters I thought were neat, but they didn't stick with me because there was nothing that they made me really feel other than Memnon, who's a character I remember, but I also remember the name Memnon because I am such an Iliad nerd, so obviously, I'd remember that. And I think that's ultimately where this show kind of disappointed me. I wanted more, and I definitely was thinking it was going to be more than 4 episodes. I feel like that's really short, and it also goes to show maybe that Disney doesn't really know what they're doing with this, or Marvel doesn't really know what they're doing with this. Some of these projects feel like we're just doing them because we said we would, as opposed to really thinking about like what we're saying with them, if that makes sense. So that's where I'm at with it. Overall, I did enjoy it. I think if I had to give it a rating out of 5, I would give it a 3. I think it's good. I think it's fine. I think, it's a low time investment. So if you wanted to watch it, I think the visuals are enough of a reason for you to give it a watch, at least a couple of the episodes, and see, if it speaks to you. And I hope it does. I hope there are other people out there that got more from this show than I did. And if you are one of those people, please do let me know down in the comments because I want to hear from you. And if you are a person that, also felt that it kind of fell flat, let me know why you think that is down in the comments and why it didn't work for you. And let me know what you think of this concept though, because it felt very what if to me. And I really like that idea of this kind of anthology with some kind of unifying element to it. I love that we even saw the Watcher in this. I thought that was so cool. So there is, I think, a lot that you could do with it. And I hope that, like with Ironheart, because there are elements of that show I also really loved, I hope that both of these things are not just forgotten. I hope that we do see some sort of carry forward because there are a lot of projects that have potential, even if the project itself isn't like as successful as I think it could be. There are characters here I would love to see return. I would love to see them really come into their own more in the MCU. I just think there's a lot that we could do with it. Also, just a heads up, if you're wondering why my voice is the way it is, yeah, I lost my voice. I was at Fan Expo, so just being at the convention and then being at events after, it's very loud. And unfortunately, I have not always treated my voice the best. I have worked in places for multiple years where I was in very loud environments, having to use my voice a lot. So I'm okay. I'm not sick or anything. It's just a little bit of laryngitis, and I'm drinking tea. So hopefully it'll, my voice will be back to normal. But until then, enjoy the husky smokiness that sounds like I've been smoking my whole life when I never have. That's all I have for this one, friends. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, as always, stay nerdy. Bye. And if you like when I talk about MCU, make sure you check this out because we do that here. And I got a lot to say.